Thank you, everyone. I'm John, and I'm going to talk to you very quickly about Django Social. You may have seen on some of the boards and things about Django Social being associated with the parties and the boat cruises, and maybe have wondered a little bit, actually, what is this thing? Up until last night, you may have checked the actual website. It wasn't working. We fixed it in the pub last night, so it's now there. Essentially, Django Social is a really easy to run, low admin social event for the Django community. It came about a little bit because of the lack of in-person interaction at the end of the pandemic, and as coming out of all COVID restrictions, just wanting to be around people, where teams have now distributed away from maybe the cities you're in, and friendship groups have also moved away, and trying to use Django as the common interest, the conversation starter to bring people back together. Skip a slide. Right. The idea for it came, I went earlier this year to Copenhagen to the Django Day event there. Brilliant event, and on the way home, just reflecting, it was like how nice it was to be back in and around people. We, a month later, decided actually would meet up for a walk in the park. This is how simple Django Social can be. We met for a walk. We did a lap of Regent's Park in London, and then went to the pub for some drinks. You might see a few faces in the middle photo there. You recognise we have also been we had a summer party, the only night in the whole English summer that it rained. And we also have met for a picnic. Now, these aren't very glamorous things, but we've had a good group of people every time, chatted Django, renewed some old friendships, made some new ones, which is just the most important thing. Why do I want to keep it simple? Actually, I suppose a couple of reasons. London's already got some great meetups, the dojos, the Django meetup, and lots going on. I think Kojo said yesterday in the keynote, actually organising events, which I'd done for 10 years previously. It is a hell of a lot of effort, and it's time consuming, and it's hard work. And so, yeah, testament to anyone who does a proper meetup with speakers and venues and everything every time. It's, yeah, hats off to you. And actually, a lot of people go for or attend meetups for the socialising part, the bit before the talks, the bit after the talks. So yeah, essentially the story of it, I was talking to the organisers about sponsoring DjangoCon, and we had a conversation about Django Social, where they were like, we can't find anything else about it, can you tell us about it? So I've had a simple, as I said, website that only started working yesterday, built, and part of the process, we built some test groups on meetup.com for different regions other than London. We tested out with actually a group in Porto, a group in Berlin, and more recently in New York, just to see that the API was working. And organically, without any publicising of this, people have been joining those groups in Porto, in Berlin, in New York, almost expectant of a social event. Just hands up very quickly, who here actually lives in Berlin? Excellent. I'm going to try and find one or two of you tonight and maybe talk about actually taking over the reins of this small meetup that we started. I will ask the same question for Porto, but it's quite busy, so I'm assuming there's a lot of you. Hold on. Am I doing for time? Okay, yeah. Kojo's talk yesterday, again, I'm going to keep reflecting back to it because I really enjoyed it, and there's a lot of poignant things he said. Equally, it's like asking like how you can help organisers of meetups. I suppose it's a little bit about, from me now, saying, look, to the room, to the community, if you live in a city or a town or a region where you don't have a meetup yet, but you don't want all the admin of having to find venues and speakers and sponsors to pay for food and drink, come and chat to me or message online. But the Django Social is essentially, it's there for the community now to just meet and do something, with Django being your common conversation starter. Some of the ideas we've had, as well as the walk, the picnic, everything else, is to have a board games night, to do a co-working day, these sort of things, and I'm happy to share those. This is me, and this is how you can get in touch with me. That might have gone 5 over, but
My name is Jaap Joris Vents. I'm from the Netherlands, but even in the Netherlands, people just call me JJ. And I work for a company called LegalSense, and we built a law practice management system that is used by really hundreds of law firms in the Netherlands. But when working on this pretty huge Django application, I encounter, really, it's a minor annoyance, but I bet most of you has had the same annoyance, and this is what my talk is actually about. And my question is, what is wrong with the following code? It's a template, and I work at a team, and everybody uses different editors in this in our team, and every editor indents the code just a little differently, and I have just a personal preference that you indent the content in the blocks further to the right than it's currently right now, right? So I think this is currently incorrectly indented. Who agrees with me? Wow, great. So I'm not alone. So if you have the same problem, I have a very easy solution for you, and it's called DjangoHTML. And the abbreviation is actually was once considered the official extension for Django templates, but I guess that never went through, and everybody just calls it HTML. DjangoHTML is now a tool that fixes your templates, and it's actually easiest to be used via pre-commit. There's only Django developers in the room here. Who of you uses pre-commit already? Okay, pretty popular. And if you didn't raise your hand, you really should, because pre-commit allows you to easily run hooks on every commit you make. And this hook, called DjangoHTML, will just automatically fix that template. After you run it, it will look like this. Problem solved. Some implementation details, if I still have time left. I have implemented DjangoHTML using regular expressions, which is always a good idea, right? But I have a little background in parsing and tokenization, so I think I implemented it somewhat correctly. If you Google for HTML parsing using regular expressions, you will get the top answer on Stack Overflow, which is this one. And this is actually great advice for parsing HTML using regular expressions, so please all follow this advice here. And have a look at the source code to see, to judge whether I did this correctly. But the take-home message really of this small lightning talk is that you all visit GitHub/rtts/DjangoHTML, add it to your pre-commit hooks, and have never to worry anymore about wrongly indented templates.
I'm Martin, and I'm from Hacksoft, which is a software company based in Sofia, which is in Bulgaria. I'm here to talk about this, which is not really visible. Fuck. Okay. Sorry about that. So, first, we all love Django. I believe all people here that are in this huge hall with a lot of people that make me nervous love Django. And we've been using it on all our projects for many years. Also, Django is a complicated framework, and we can all agree about that. We all know that it has an awesome documentation, but it's really easy to get lost in it. So that's why we decided to create the Django style guide. It's a set of guidelines and patterns that we follow. I can't use my mouse, whatever. It's a set of guidelines and patterns that we follow in all our projects. And we actually decided to put it live in the open source world a couple of years ago. And since then, we've been receiving nice feedback and been developing it. It's not visible because I can't use my mouse, but it has like 2K stars, which I found awesome. So this style guide is opinionated, which is a word I can't pronounce. This is definitely not the only way you can build your Django apps. Our only idea is to share with you what works for us. And of course, you can always just pick whatever works for you and adapt it in a way that makes sense. Where is my mouse? Here it is. This is how it looks. It's honestly, I refer to it as a documentation. And as Daniele said earlier, the idea of the documentation is to, is to trigger discussions. So we will be really happy if you write the issue and ask us some questions either on GitHub, on Twitter, or here in person, and share your thoughts about it. What else? I think that's it, actually. I've just created two QR codes, so you can, oops. Opa. Yeah, we also have this project where we show in code what we hit in the style guide, which is better than my whitening talk, believe me. So you can check it out as well. And if you want the links from before 2 seconds, we'll share them in Twitter. So, thanks.
Okay, sorry for the logistics. Let's go. Okay, so today I wanted to tell you a bit about an adventure into HTTP 3. So you may be aware that there's a new revision of HTTP which was finalized over the summer eventually. Given the fact that it's a lightning talk, I'm not going to go into the details of the protocol. The idea is more to start a bit of a discussion with you. I'm Jeremy. I've been using Django and Python for quite a while. My day job is the CTO for Spacivox, which provides contact center solutions. And I'm also the author of a couple of free software libraries. One is a WebRTC implementation in Python, and the other one is an implementation of Quick and HTTP 3, and that's what's going to be of interest today. So if we just take a step back and look where HTTP fits in our ecosystem as Python and more specifically Django developers. Okay, when we're running a Django app, we're nicely isolated from the actual HTTP transport via an HTTP server with a very convenient and standardized interfaces between our Django app and the HTTP server. We may also encounter HTTP from a client perspective if we're calling out to some external APIs. And so usually we're not going to make the HTTP calls ourselves, but use a library such as requests or HTTPX. So what a quick overview of some of the motivations and some of the characteristics of HTTP3. One of the main goals was to be able to multiplex multiple streams of data without encountering a phenomenon known as head-of-line blocking, let's say, where loss of data is not going to affect just one stream, but all the streams. Some subsidiary goals are also reducing initial connection establishment times and the round trips. It has built-in and mandatory support for encryption. And it also introduces some new APIs which have really no equivalent in previous HTTP versions. So if you look up web transport, you're going to find that there are new APIs within the browser which interact in quite a deep way with the actual transport layer. One thing that HTTP3 does is that it blurs some boundaries which we're used to. So on the left we have the traditional, let's say, network stack as we know it for HTTP1 or HTTP2, where each layer plays its very distinct roles. We're going to be building upon TCP, which is given for free to us by the OS and gives us reliable ordered streams. We'll have encryption on top, and then finally the top layer, let's say, of the protocol stack is going to be the actual HTTP. Things look a bit different with HTTP3, where we have this sort of thing in the middle of the sandwich which is quick and which does encryption, but also kind of reinvents or re-implements, let's say, some of the traditional functions of TCP on top of UDP, so an unreliable, let's say, protocol, but which still solves some of the design goals of HTTP3. Why should you care? I think the first point I'd like to highlight is that a very large and complex protocol stack has been introduced in user space, meaning it's no longer a commodity which you can rely on at the operating system level. This is part of the stack that you potentially need to ship. If you're using HTTP as a client, it's probably going to have to be vendored with possible problems of ecosystem fragmentation or dependencies. Currently, the state of the Python ecosystem is that we do have a quick and HTTP implementation, so AIO quick, but currently it is not fully integrated with the libraries which you might use. On the client side, we have nothing. On the server side, we do have one server which allows you to run your Django apps straight on HTTP3, and that's Hypercorn. And there's also a discussion we need to have about how we see this fitting in with web apps, because we have something called Web Transport, which supports something very close to WebSockets, but also something entirely new, let's say, in the web ecosystem, which is the fact that we can do packet or message-based exchanges. And so how does this fit in within our protocol stack and protocols like ASGI? This is something we need to think about. So there we go.
Hello everyone. As you know by Pedro, my name is João. So I'm going to talk about some utilities I made for our company. We deal a lot with forms, and we have a lot of stuff like back office, forms, wizards. So we had to implement something that allowed us to use a lot of forms in a custom interface. So sometimes we have a lot of forms and we need to display them, but if we have a lot of forms on a single page, it's not going to look good. So what is the solution? The solution is to turn it into a wizard, where you can switch between points or do it in a single line. There are some implementations. There is the Django Form Tools package. As you can see, it has a wizard view implementation, but there is a small problem for us. It uses cookies or session, and we don't want to store anything on the browser, just on the models. So what did we do? We did a wizard view interface. In this case, it's a general class view that allows you to put a form and a form set, or just a form set, or just a form. It connects to a main model. As you can see there is the wizard group. The wizard group makes a group of all the steps and joins them, makes the URL routing very easy. So it just, the next button will always go to the next step, the previous button to the previous. It's all very, very automated. You can provide a label and a lot of other parameters to help making the template. So as you can see, another features, it supports multiple routes. If you need to make if a user has a special selection and changes routes, you can have multiple routes depending on the value of fields on the model. Configuration, as I said, of URLs, and allows you to store the state of the module of the wizard on a JSON. So if you want to display like completion state, if the user has already passed on a step or not, you can do it directly inside the JSON field on the model. And I'll present some utility methods. Here we have some form set methods to allow you to customize the quarks, the form quarks inside the form set and the initial because form view and create view, update view don't have a lot of customization in these areas, only for forms, not form sets. And even for forms, we split the form valid and form invalid methods into inside methods, like form save, form set save, that call form save inside, and you can customize it if you want to do like commit false. You can customize these methods to change variables inside the models, or stop if, for example, if a user doesn't have permission, you can stop raising HTTP 404 before he saves, stuff like that. This is a demo. As you can see in the top, we have the navigation bar, the steps, the navigation buttons, and a regular form. But we have other utilities and other views too, like one of the most important aspects is if the user has submitted all the steps and the data is valid. So we have a solution for that. Press a button and the user can see what he has already submitted and what he hasn't. With we call it a validate view. We have a group of forms. You can, it runs validation, as I'll show it. Yes. So with a group of forms, in this case it's a wizard group because we are using the wizard view you saw. And uses a custom from renderer and response as a JSON.
It's good. Cool, hello. So it's me again, but this time I'm going to talk to you about getting good data for your development environment, or CI, or your test suite, or whatever. So first of all, why do we even need good development data? There are many reasons. One, to reduce the time you spend setting up use cases to test your changes. Two, to mimic real-life bugs that exist in production. Three, to get new developers going with the software as swiftly as possible. Four, to aid in load testing. You can't test how a list view performs if you've only got like 3 items. And the last one, to stand up per pull request environments for reviewing changes. These are absolutely no good without a good development data set. And so how do we get that? Unless you're manually creating the data you need to test your software every time you need to do so, there are essentially 2 routes for getting decent data during development. One of them is seeding, which is the act of building up a test database from scratch, either by importing a set of static fixtures or programmatically generating a set of data. And the other one is snapshotting, which is the idea behind taking data from another environment, usually production, as it by definition has the most real data and therefore the most helpful. So if we look at seeding, it works really well for simple data models and is relatively easy to set up. Anybody can go away and create a script that dumps the data in the database, and they can be really quick. It can be a really quick solution for some projects. But if, like us, you run a complex piece of software with many models that need to be in certain states in tandem and at the right time, then generating the right data becomes a surprisingly tricky problem. Another issue is the data is synthetic by design. It only covers the happy cases the author thought about when they first wrote it, and not all the bad data cases that production will endlessly throw at you. And over time, on larger projects, maintaining this setup can be a full-time job in its own right. As for snapshotting production data and reusing it, the upsides are that it will get real data to work with, including all that weird legacy data hiding the back of the production database. And you'll generally get more out of it too, because your actual users are generating data for you. Snapshotting undoubtedly gets you a better data set than seeding, but it comes with a whole bunch of downsides. One, using production data anywhere outside of production itself is a massive no-no if it's relatable back to the person, thanks to GDPR, and that's a genuine thanks. It's also a security nightmare. You don't want a development leaving a machine on a bus. You don't want a developer leaving a machine on a bus and accidentally taking your entire production data set with it if you haven't encrypted it. It also requires more upfront work to set up a snapshotting pipeline that will work for your entire team and allow easy installation of the data across all environments. And finally, Not everyone's production database can fit on your laptop, and neither should you want it to. Taking it row for row with no edits is not realistic in most scenarios. So we've had various incarnations of development data pipelines over the years. Our first attempt was using Factory Boy, which is quite relevant given the last talk, to build up a series of use cases which successfully got applied to the database. This worked for a while, but fell apart as people added strange one-off use cases or made use cases which relied on other use cases which got removed, and it just became a total pain to maintain. Another huge mistake we made with this was to reuse the same Factory Boy classes as our test suite. Don't do that. It's a terrible idea, and it will result in a huge impact on your test speeds. Our second attempt was to mirror our production data set to a temporary database, and then apply a series of, quite frankly, mad SQL scripts to delete data we didn't need and anonymize the remaining set. Because we took the approach of cutting down an actual database, an actual live database, our various constraints got in the way and made this a very annoying thing to maintain. It's also detached from reality in that someone can add a new field without anonymizing it, and we'd have a data leak on our hands. So it's not good, don't do that. So what does the future hold? Luckily for us, there are many people working on solving this problem, and the one I'm going to talk about today is a small company called Snaplit. Snaplit are a Berlin-based but remote startup aiming to solve all the problems I mentioned with snapshotting. So Snaplit is a command line tool that gives developers a coder's configuration way to transform, subset, and generate data. The config is committed to a repository, much like you set up GitHub Actions or any other CI product. The data is stored wherever you like as snapshots once captured, and those can be restored to any developer environment. At its simplest, it can be broken down to two commands, snaplit capture and snaplit snapshot restore. They're pretty obvious. Let's see what the config looks like. So this is the subsetting config. What this basically does
This is the voice.
No.
The talk is over.
Amazing. All right. Two more
Thank
slides.
you.
Thank you. Yeah, go check out Snaplit docs.